We're talking about surrealism, Henry. We started off talking about the demonic influence and people who negated standard, folksy human values like home, security, and family. I mean, people like Aubrey Beardsley and Oscar Wilde and Aleister Crowley and The World Well Lost School, The Pale Blue Flower, Art for Art's Sake, and all the decadent, screwy writers. How do you account for it that a man named Baudelaire, who wrote wonderful poetry, said a line also, I think it was he who said, "Be always drunken."
Well, yes, but what does that mean? Be always ecstatic. Be always filled with a divine intoxication. That was the meaning of it. It wasn't drunkenness in the brutal sense, naturally, huh? Yes, but it was to be filled with a divine intoxication, yes. And who celebrated that more in his writing? Rabelais. Rabelais. I have a wonderful passage in one of my books quoting Arthur Machen, the Welsh writer, who talks about the long word lists of obscene things that Rabelais reels off, do you see? And he says something to the effect, observe that this is no normal, ordinary cataloging. This is something abnormal. This is something supernormal, supercharged, that it has a meaning beyond it, do you see? That it's a divine intoxication. Yes. And he said something like, it's the best preparation for life to absorb this, to drink it, taste it. Yeah.
Baudelaire, who in, I think, 1856, in the middle of the 19th century, found a link with Edgar Allan Poe in the middle of the 19th century. You certainly couldn't find two societies of Western world more different than New York of 1850 and Paris of 1850. Do you agree?
That's right.
And still these two men found a link like
yes,
two wires
strike
right. A spark when they touch.
That's right. Yes. Well, in the sense they were both outcasts from their world. Poe, as you know, was a dishonorable figure, as it were, in American life or society. Isn't that so? There was something shameful about him in our eyes at that time. And Baudelaire, of course, definitely was. He had made himself such. I think Poe didn't try so hard. It just happened, because he went against the grain. But Baudelaire flung himself in the face of society. He spat on society, you might say, huh? Yes, and history or a catalog of disaster. Yet all these men are filled with a vision of something better to come,
Why do you pick the tortured spirits instead of the solid and complete spirits?
Because it was the tortured spirits who reflect the spirit, I think. It was the spirit that was being tortured in that century. Precisely that. You hit the crux of it in my mind. You see? The others represent, you might say, the status quo, the trend toward nowhere, so to speak, which is the usual trend. And the others are the afflicted ones. And the afflicted ones are always afflicted because they're trying to preserve something, maintain something that is vital to us, that lifts us up, that keeps us and nourishes us, don't you know? I say, yes, you take Blake. Well, he began in the 18th, he moves into the 90s. He's at the very threshold, don't you know? Very great figure, prophetic figure, an enigmatic one, very big in the realm of poetry, and philosophy, if you like, or religion. Yeah, great figure. And you have Nietzsche, in the middle again, you see. Then you have crazy men like Strindberg. Then you have even that fairly sane man, Ibsen. Look at his dramas, what revolt, what a castigation of society you have there, don't you know? Isn't that so? It shows you the modern world falling apart, Its dilemmas are petty dilemmas, so to speak, don't you know, Huck?
Henry, how do you explain this choice in this 19th century of these special figures? What is so modern about them? Why do they appeal to modern man, do you think? I mean, what is the link between the names that you pick out, Blake and Ibsen, Nietzsche and others? In other words, what do you think appeals to modern man in these figures who are not modern?
I think that they represent in their work, or they delineate his peculiar tragedy, that they previsioned it. They foresaw what was happening to the world and to man. I think it's primarily that. The others are depicting life around them, as every artist can always do. It's a petty labor of every day, this descriptive thing, you know, of recounting what is happening before your eyes. But the other men probe deeper and get to the real crux of man's problems. Primarily it was that man in the 19th century began to feel a loneliness which we do not know about, at least as I read history. I have never read it before, of a loneliness so great as the modern man feels. He has been feeling it for a century now, and he's getting more and more lonely, more and more atomized, as it were, do you see? He's been blown apart, you might say. He's lost. He's in a world where he has no bearings. He's on his own. That's another before either, because in the past he had tradition, he had convention, he had God and church, you know. He had an organized society, quite strong. There were castes, there were grades, and so on. Today, all that is gone, you see. And a man has to save himself. There are no longer any intermediaries. There are no intercessors.